Hello, thank you for joining us today. This is Ann Roberts, the Director of Organization for the Golden Crown Literary Society. I want to welcome you to the 2020 GCLS Virtual Con and today's panel, Chemistry 101. For those of you new to GCLS, the GCLS recognizes and rewards quality literary works about women who love women and provides learning opportunities, encouragement, and assistance to new and established writers. We have a highly respected writing academy, an annual conference of hundreds of readers, writers, publishers, and editors, and a monthly GCLS members-only online book club. We invite you to learn more about GCLS and perhaps become a member by visiting our website, goldencrown.org. The GCLS would like to thank everyone who continues to support us through donations. Here are a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. We'll have about 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the session for Q&A. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can. Please be sure to use the Zoom Q&A box to submit a question. This is the section our moderator will be monitoring. If you run into technical issues, please log off and log back in. This usually resolves most issues. Okay, that does it for announcements. We hope you enjoy this presentation, and I will turn the session over to our moderator, Carson Tate.
Hello, I am Professor Carson Tate of chemistry, and I'm here with this stellar panel. I'm going to take a quick second to introduce everyone, and we'll start with Georgia Beers. Georgia Beers accidentally fell into writing romance. 27 books later, she's still at it and still adores crafting that journey into love that her characters take, because who doesn't love a little romance? She lives in upstate New York with her dog and cat, and her goals in life are to drink all the wine. Are you doing it now? Eat all
yes, a little early.
We don't know what's in that
Or
mug.
is it?
And pet all the animals. And then we also have Jay joining us from Germany. Hi, Jay. Jay is the author of 21 award-winning romances between women. She lives in the sunniest city in Germany, near the French and Swiss borders. She used to work as a psychologist, but happily gave up her day job in 2013 to become a full-time writer and part-time editor. Jamie Clevenger lives in Colorado with her wife, two kids, two cats, and only one golden retriever?
Only one?
She has published a number of romance novels with Bella Books and won a Goldie last year for 3 Reasons to Say Yes. Award-winning author Rachel Spranger has lots of college degrees, but her chemistry cred is all self-taught. She currently mixes romantic elements for Bywater Books, and her most current release is Spanish Surrender, which showcases one of her favorite places in the world and lots of steam.
Well done. You're writing all of my bios from now on.
Elle Spencer would like you to know that it's 7 a.m. in California, and she is not a morning person. This means you can expect some incoherent sentences, slurring of words, and possibly some nodding off. She wrote a lot more stuff for me to say while she tries to wake up, but I'm just gonna toss out a question to the panel, and I'll go
Carson.
I'll go to you last to let you have a little extra time with the coffee.
I think we should all put our sunglasses on.
I know, I feel the need to do that.
No, mine are over there.
So I love talking about chemistry because I think it's kind of the secret sauce of a romance novel. And I'm going to toss it out there to all of you. I'm going to start with you, Rachel. How would you define chemistry?
This is the one question I didn't want to go first on, but this is what I get for not answering your emails.
Exactly.
I sent like several emails and I didn't answer any of them, but I read all of them, so I knew this question was coming. And I think, so Carson, you're a lawyer. Didn't one of our Supreme Court justices say once that their definition of pornography was that they knew it when they saw it?
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, so that's kind of how I feel about chemistry, is that it's, by its very nature, very hard to quantify. But we all know it when we see it. We know it, I would say even a step further, is that we know it when we feel it. I think that chemistry is something external that produces an internal reaction. And I hope that when that reaction is produced between the characters, a similar feeling is experienced by the readers.
That warm, fuzzy feeling.
Tingly.
Yes, tingling. Jay, would you like to talk about tingling?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, as Rachel said, it's hard to define it, but to me, it's that spark between two characters, that special connection that makes readers want to root for them to get together. And it's more than just a tingling. It's not just physical. Also, that is a part of it, but I think it's the sum of everything that draws the character to each other and make them perfect for each other.
Georgia?
I agree with everything that's been said. I do think that it's hard to define. I also think it's that thing that gets the readers to root for your couple. It's the thing that, you know, your readers read that and they want these two to be together. As much as if you're writing them well, these two characters want to be together. The chemistry is what gets your readers to keep turning the pages. I think if you don't have any chemistry, you're going to have a tough time holding on to your reader.
Jamie? You're a physician?
I'm not a physician, but a veterinarian. Yeah, I love this question because it gets at, so how do we define chemistry? It's not just the attraction, but the interaction. And so you can have someone who is looking at a character, you say, okay, they have all these attractive features, or maybe they have all these attractive things to somebody, but they're not traditionally attractive. But the interaction between two characters is what is the most exciting part of a story. So why do two people interact together? And it's like two chemicals, and I won't get nerdy beyond that, but for me, it's the excitement that happens in those little touches and all the interactions that happen. My kid is here, so I'm gonna stop there.
She's like, she left.
Talking about boring stuff. little
I think Elle fell asleep. I think Elle is sleeping.
Elle? Elle?
All right.
Okay.
I consulted the worldwide interweb. So I have a quote. Chemistry is you touching my mind and it's setting my body on fire. So chemistry is mutual, palpable, magnetic, sparks, goosebumps, like they said, warm, tingly feeling. I was listening. It's the desire to be near someone because it just feels so good.
I love all those answers. And they kind of make a great segue into my next question. And I'm going to toss this out to Jay first. And I warned her in advance. So I want to toss this out to you because you, I think, are the only one on the panel who has an asexual romance that you have written. So what's the difference between romantic chemistry and the physical chemistry that we think of, physical attraction? And how do you convey that difference to the reader?
Yeah, it was interesting. Jamie said something about when someone is attractive, and that meant physically attractive. And that's what we often mean if we talk about two people being attracted to each other. We most of the time are really talking about sexual attraction, physical attraction. And we kind of ignore that there's a lot of different types of attractions and that they all belong in a romance novel and they all need to be there. Just to give you a little hint of what attractions there are, there's a sensual attraction, for example, and it's not the same as sexual. It's physical, but it's non-sexual. It can include cuddling and kissing and touching, but not in a sexual way. And there's romantic attraction, which is the desire to form a romantic relationship and to form a commitment with another person. There's emotional attraction, to share your feelings and to get and give emotional support. And then there's aesthetic attraction, which is like a purely visual form of appreciation for how another person looks, but it doesn't mean you want to touch them or do anything. It's more like you would look at a beautiful painting. And also there's intellectual attraction, meaning to share deep, meaningful, and stimulating conversation with someone. And for most characters and most people, all of these different attraction usually align, meaning if you're deeply in love with someone, you will be sexually attracted, romantically attracted, and the whole rest of the attractions. But for an asexual person like Holly in my novel Perfect Rhythm, she experiences all of these types of attraction with the exception of the sexual one, meaning she will deeply love her partner, she will cuddle and kiss and enjoy everything with her, but for her that doesn't translate into wanting to jump her bones. And to me, it wasn't a very different kind of novel to write because I base all of my novels on a lot of the other attractions first and foremost, and the physical part is just one of many different kinds of bonds that the characters share. And because I'm not writing erotica, I write romance. And that's the big difference to me, to focus it not just on what pulls them together physically, but what draws them to each other as people, and to put that on the page.
Well, I can tell from the chat roll that your novel was very well received.
I was noticing that too.
So anybody else want to talk about that? I'm going to toss this to Jamie back because Jay mentioned you in her response and your answer to the previous question. So why don't you talk a little bit about what's, the difference between romantic chemistry, physical attraction, and
So honestly, this was the one question I didn't want to answer, but I will.
I have a knack for this.
I think the hard part for me is that they are so entwined, and it's hard for me to write characters that don't want to jump each other's bones. But I can imagine it. It just doesn't really come intuitively. Because for me, if someone has that strong attraction, be it intellectual or physical, there's going to be crossing of lines. And I can't imagine writing a character that wouldn't want to go there. So yeah, somebody else gets to tag.
I'm gonna tag L.
Oh, okay. So my friend put it this way. Physical attraction happens with parts other than your heart. So I think if you're talking just straight physical attraction, it usually happens instantly. And you don't really have to have a knowledge of who the person is other than how they look. And it can happen later, but then I think you're adding in things like love and trust and respect. So.
Do you have to have one without the other? I mean, for you?
Physical attraction without romantic?
No, romantic without, or the other way around.
Oh, for me personally, I can totally be attracted to someone and not know who they are. Totally. Yeah, I don't think that's necessary, but it's nice when you have both.
Georgia?
It's interesting. I have 2 points that I've been thinking about while I've been listening to everybody, and to jump on something that Jay said earlier was that it was being attracted to somebody without the sexual aspect of it. And I'm probably going to get some interesting comments about this, but that's how I sometimes feel about men. I can find a man extremely attractive. I can appreciate the male form. I just don't want to do that with him. Do you know what I mean? So it's almost a similar kind of reaction. And then when I think about chemistry that doesn't necessarily involve, like if I think about chemistry versus physical chemistry, romantic chemistry versus physical chemistry, I think about some of the characters that I've seen on TV shows that are not together and will not be together, but have very obvious chemistry. And for me, somebody who comes to mind is Scully and Reyes in the X-Files. I thought they had amazing chemistry. They were never going to be together. They were never meant to be together, but I would watch them and just be like, and I think the same thing about Rizzoli and Isles. Even though they played a little bit to the audience, they were not going to be together. They were never going to be together. Those two women have chemistry. So I think that that also harkens back to the, you know it when you see it, or you know it when you read it. So there's definitely a difference. And what Elle said, the difference between, you know, chemistry, being attracted with your mind and being attracted with your body are two different things. And I think that that's a really great definition of the difference of the two things, of physical and romantic chemistry. Because not ever having experienced asexuality, that stuff is so interesting to me. Listening to the details and how differently an asexual person thinks than I do is so interesting. And that helps clear, listening to Jay's explanation clears a lot of things up for me, things that I don't know about, things that I'm uneducated about. So I find that also interesting. Chemistry is just incredibly interesting to me.
Which is why you proposed this panel, I'm sure.
Seriously, yeah.
And I'm sure you take a minute to read the chat roll, because lots of people agree with you about finding the opposite sex attractive, even if you don't want to.
I was worried about that.
I share your love of Chris's. So.
Yes, right? Give me a John Stamos, give me a Rob Lowe. My 80s boys are showing.
Totally. Spangler, you want to tackle this?
Yeah, I feel like you guys are really helping to hone in on the difference between attraction and chemistry. And I think the thing that I would add sort of example-wise to that is that I think we've all been in situations where we see a woman and we are immediately attracted to her. You have that physical reaction, and then they do or they say something that is so off-putting that you are no longer, it's not just that you're mentally turned off, but like they are less physically attractive to you in that moment. And the example I always give to people is that Sarah Palin and Tina Fey look like the exact same person, and one of them is infinitely more attractive than the other when they open their mouth. Okay, so that gets down to how chemistry is different than attraction. You know, everybody has these things that they find off-putting on a mental or an intellectual level, and that maybe just for me, but I think for other people too, that affects how you view someone as a total person. And I think that gets to the heart of chemistry more than just a physical attraction. I think, Elle, you said you can totally be attracted to someone you don't know at all, but you can't have chemistry with someone you don't know at all.
Correct.
Well,
and it goes the other way too, because you can see someone and be immediately attracted, and then they open their mouth and you're more attracted, or they open their mouth and you are way less attracted. Like their attraction level goes way down and your chemistry level goes way down, depending on, it's very intellectual as well as physical. It's totally intellectual.
Yeah, and there's a term called sapiosexual, which is just an intellectual attraction to someone, but that can often present itself with the exact same tics and tells as a physical attraction.
Someone in the chat roll I think it was Anna, said, you know, when I see someone not wearing a mask, that immediately makes them less attractive.
Well, I mean, that's a direct play on their intelligence, right?
Exactly.
Well, Georgia, you and I have been out somewhere telling tales. We have been.
Oh my God. You're going to tell this story, aren't you?
I don't know. I'm thinking of several stories, but we have been out somewhere where a woman has been, you know, in the vicinity, and we have both been like, and then she lit up a cigarette and we both went,
yeah. Turn off for me immediately.
Georgia and I are highly, highly allergic to cigarette smoke. And so it was funny. We both had the exact same physical attraction of,
Yep.
Oh.
Yep. We did.
Just in that moment.
So I just want to remind our audience that please ask questions. Feel free, and make sure you put those in the Q&A box. We're watching the chat roll, but I'm zoned in on the Q&A box for all your questions. But while you're typing your questions, I have more. So all of you have written multiple books. How do you keep the chemistry fresh from book to book? Let's see. Georgia,
I had a feeling that. And that's the one question I didn't want to answer. No, I'm just kidding.
I've
It's
read the
hard.
most books. That's why I'm picking on you.
I figure. It's not easy. It's not an easy thing. And I don't know if I have a method per se. I just know if it's there or if it isn't. And I feel like if in my head these people have chemistry, then I'll be able to write them that way, and my readers will think so. But I've had times when I've written books and I've gone back and read a scene and I'm like, these two are just, this is not working. And I think that's a different question, so I won't answer how to fix that. But I don't really have an answer to that. It's part of my job, basically. And so I make it work. I mean, really, that sounds like a cop-out, but I don't know. It's a big factor of writing as you write more books, because the last thing you want to do is write the same book over and over and over again. So I try to find different ways, different jobs, different conflicts. I think sometimes the conflict informs the chemistry, you know, the forbidden love, the enemies to lovers, you know, sometimes the chemistry is built in, but you have to shine a spotlight on it. So I just do the best I can.
So I have a follow-up question for you. You said if you can feel, if it's in your head,
Yeah.
But do you actually feel the chemistry when you're writing?
I usually feel the physical chemistry first, because in my head, I know exactly what they look like. And then I put them together and I'm like, oh, okay, they're hot. But that doesn't translate to the reader, because even if I describe them really well, they're not necessarily seeing who I'm seeing. So then you have to add in the intellectual chemistry, which is really infinitely more important. I don't even know if that answered the question, but that's what I'm saying. I'm sticking with that.
It indeed answered the question.
And I'm out.
And she's done. Jamie, do you want to talk about this some? Also, you have a book with different possibilities too.
I do have a book with different possibilities. Yeah, I think that Georgia was getting to what my answer was, which was that the conflict itself is part of the chemistry. And so in books where I feel like if I don't have the chemistry right when they very first meet, then I just got to go back and fix that, because going forward, it's not going to work. Like, they have to have sparks immediately. And that's one of the things that I've noticed if I read other books and I'm like, not excited to finish the book, it's usually because there wasn't an initial attraction that was so exciting to me that I just couldn't wait to see what happened with these two characters. So when I'm writing, it doesn't really matter if they how they look with the physical attributes of them, but if there's some conflict that you just can't wait to see these two people fix the conflict, because you know they're so drawn together, you know they're going to end up together. So for me, it's not a problem of keeping it interesting as long as you're writing a different book each time, because the conflict is what's pulling these two.
No, I think that's really important. I do think it's, you know, when you can hook the reader right off the bat with that instant attraction, then you've got it from there. But so anybody else want to talk about this? How do you keep it fresh from book to book? Jay?
To me, I'm not so much about conflict translating into great chemistry. For me, great chemistry is based on great character development. So to keep the chemistry fresh, I think the key is to create characters that are different from the characters in other books, and to make them real people and three-dimensional people, and to give them a full life, and that doesn't just begin on page 1, to give them backstories and to give them traits that complement each other and challenge each other, and that translates to the chemistry on the page.
So does all that backstory come through in the book, or is it, do you do a lot of that just to prepare?
It's the iceberg principle.
Gotcha.
You can't put it all on the page, but I think readers will sense that you know these characters in and out. And then you just give them little hints to just enough that they really know a character, but they don't need to know what name the teacher in first grade had or stuff like that, but you might know.
Rachel?
Yeah, I was going to say something very similar to that, in that the things that I worry about, Carson, you're killing me. The things that I worry about not being fresh are really surface level. Like, I worry that I might end up giving someone a similar tick, that they might bite their nail in 2 different books, or they might bite their lip in 2 different books. But the heart of the chemistry, I never worry about that being repetitive, because the characters should be so different that you can't, I don't know, I guess there's a possibility that you write the same character twice and give them a different name. But if you know them, if they are a full, unique person, as unique as you and I, and as developed as you and I, then there really shouldn't be a chance for the major key points to become too repetitive. Yeah, I'm always afraid that they'll have like a similar catchphrase to somebody else, or a similar sort of, I'm always working on like scent cues. Like, does have 4 characters in a row smelled like jasmine? You know, like those things I worry.
I do, Rach. I do that too.
Yeah, I worry that those little bits could get repetitive, but the essence of what draws 2 characters together, it shouldn't be that possible.
So Elle, why don't you tackle that?
So I think, I agree with everything everyone is saying. You give your character a strong enough voice, they'll be unique, and their relationship will be unique, and then the chemistry will also be unique or feel unique to your reader. And there's no bigger compliment, I think, than having a reader really remember your character and know them, feel like they know them well. And weeks after they've read your book, they're still thinking about the character. And chemistry will for sure play into that.
Great. So I'm going to go to some audience questions here. We have a lot of them, and I'm going to ask ones I want to know the answer to. So is it easier to convey chemistry in first or third person? Have you all written in both first and third person at some point?
Yeah, I'm actually writing in first person right now.
So Georgia, then since you spoke up first, I'll let you answer first.
Okay. I think that it's a different feeling. It's a different level. I don't know if I would say you can, what was the question again? More deeply? What was it? All right, I'm going to look.
No, it's, I mean, basically.
Is there a difference? Is that it? Is there a difference?
I mean, is it easier or harder? What other specific challenges?
It's different. It's different. When you're in first person, you're locked into one person's head. So all you can get is what they are feeling and what they may ascertain from what they are seeing, hearing, smelling, all of that stuff. With third person, you're in both people's heads. So you get a little more, I think you get more detail, but I think in first person it's deeper. And I don't know how to convey that better, but I feel like you can go to another level from first person because you're really deep inside somebody's head. Not that you can't be in third person, I just feel like it's a different feel, if that makes any sense. That's a terrible answer. Rachel, help me.
It's a great answer.
I know. I'm watching you struggle with it.
I know what I want to say, but it's not coming out right.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think in first person, you get to feel that person's feelings at a really deep and intimate level. You have the time and the page space to talk about things that you would never get to talk about if you had to give both people equal page time. Okay. So I think that's true. But the flip side is that by giving that one character all of that space, you have inherently limited the other character. And so you have the challenge then of conveying them as clearly as possible without making it feel really uneven. And I think there are a couple ways to do this. One, and the easiest coming from me right now, is to just make that second character an extrovert. If that character says everything that they're thinking, either to the other main character or to their best friend or whoever you have set up as sort of their confidant, it's really easy if you have that person be a character who can say, oh my God, she makes me feel tingly all over and I don't even know what's happening inside my body right now. So you have given us that sort of insight through what she says. It's a little harder. That is not what I chose to do in the book that I wrote in first person. I made the extrovert my point character and really screwed myself because the other character was an introvert. And at that point, it's a lot harder because then
She's
then what
processing internally.
yeah, she's processing internally. So what
You're
you
not
have
allowed
to
in there.
is make your point character really observant. Your point character has to become really intuitive. She has to notice things like, oh, when Lena is mad, she won't make eye contact. When Lena is sad, she picks at her fingernails. And that other character has to articulate these things for the reader because the reader doesn't see her on her own. She only sees her through the eyes of your point character. And so that person then has to notice these things explicitly.
Good answer, Rach. Thank you.
That was a good answer. Now, the master class taught by Rachel Spengler.
Extroversion and point of view, next year's
So, Elle, I'm going to toss this question to you. Can a romance succeed if the couple begins the journey with very little chemistry? Can they find it later? This is from Melissa Braden.
Yes, because I mean, take enemies to lovers, that trope. Even if they're enemies, there's got to be some chemistry and some passion and some, even if it's an angry passion, something's got to be there to make the reader root for this couple, even if one of them is being an idiot. They've got to want them to work it out and get together. So yes, absolutely.
So it's possible they don't even know there's chemistry, but we can see it. Maybe.
We can see it, yes.
Anybody else? Jay, would you like to take that question from Melissa?
I would agree. I would agree. I think the characters need to be aware of each other from the first time they see each other or interact. But it doesn't necessarily have to be a positive awareness, like liking each other. It can be negative. It's sometimes even more fun if there is a bit of a push-pull between them. And then during the course of the book, it shifts towards a more positive romance or more positive relationship. The problematic moment is just that you can't go from I hate you to I love you with nothing in between.
So yeah, we've all probably met somebody that kind of got under our skin for some reason. We just don't know why. And then we develop into, it's because we don't like them or because we like them a lot.
Yeah, I'd like to throw out a question to my fellow panelists along that line as I take notes as I'm struggling with my next novel. Do both characters have to feel the same or very similar levels of chemistry towards the other, or can it be uneven in the beginning?
Uneven makes it really interesting.
I think so too. I agree with that 100%.
Yeah, I think that's just really adds to the story and adds to the conflict and how they're going to get together. Yeah, I mean, one character can be totally in love and the other one not.
Right. Well, when you have the rather common, I don't have time for love. She can maybe feel a little bit of that chemistry, but she doesn't want to. So, while the other one, as Elle said, is like the puppy dog jumping at her leg. Love me, love me, love me, love me.
All right, Georgia, we don't need to quote me directly.
Anybody else want to tackle Rachel's question?
I I'm not so sure I agree. If it's too uneven, it would, to me, feel like a stalker situation more than a romance. But maybe the trick is not so much the attraction side, but the conflict side. Maybe she feels the attraction, maybe it's a different type of attraction that is in the foreground for her, but there needs to be, if one is already in love with the other and the other is like, go away, that would be a little too extreme. But maybe the conflict is stronger for her, so she has more reason not to give in to the attraction. That would, I think, make more sense to me.
Yeah, there can also be other reasons other than that the one isn't attracted. That, you know, there could be situations where, you know, maybe it's a employee, employer, you know, other things that get in the way of them actually being together.
That makes sense. So here's another good question. Jamie, I'm going to toss this one out to you. And then I'm going to have everybody answer this. It's from Pamela Stewart. Which book and two characters in that same work contain the best depiction of chemistry you've ever captured in your writing?
So the book that I'm just published, so it's coming out in July, I think has my best chemistry, just because I was so excited to see these two characters together. And so, I mean, I haven't had any reception, I haven't had any reviews yet on this book, but I feel like as an author, you can't wait for them to get into bed. You know, the chemistry is good. And I really wanted to tackle angry sex, because I love the emotion of romantic sex and, you know, oh, I'm so in love with you. But for me, there's a certain draw to, I just can't stand you right now. Like, I just can't stand you so much that I want to dump you. And and these two characters, they really liked each other, and you knew they really liked each other, but they were also really, really angry with each other. And so this book, the both of them, when they do get into bed, there's definitely a little bit of an element of, what the heck am I doing? Why am I doing this? Because they know that they're still mad. But so that was, I don't know, we'll see what readers think, but it felt like there was a lot of chemistry to me. And I need to know these characters best, so whatever readers think, I know.
What's the name of the book?
This is Just One Reason.
Gotcha. Awesome. Writing that down. And Georgia.
That's a hard question because I don't like to toot my own horn, so I'm not really good at picking a book and going, this one. But I have a lot of books. I just had to look behind me to remember what some of them were. There are a couple that I remember, as Jamie said, I cannot wait to get these two in bed. That's how you know that it's some great chemistry. So I feel like going way, way back, I think Too Close to Touch had that with Kylie and Gretchen. I couldn't wait to get them into bed together. Starting from scratch, something about Elena, the character of Elena, she holds such a special, sexy place in my heart. And I think because I wrote that one in first person, it was like I created this super sexy woman, and now I'm writing in first person, so I actually get to, you know what I mean? I actually get to go to bed with her as this character. So that one I think is probably in my top 3. But they do shift. I mean, the one that I'm writing right now, the book that I'm currently writing, which is called The Secret Poet, they've got some good chemistry, but also the book that I just edited, which comes out in August, Hopeless Romantic, they've got some really good chemistry. So it's a really difficult question, and I think it can shift a little depending on your mood, depending on where you're at in your writing career. You know, I say that I loved the chemistry in Too Close to Touch. That was my third book. It was my third book. So now I'm on 27. So going all the way back to my third book, it's got some issues. I could have done things differently, but I stand by the chemistry between Kylie and Gretchen because I think it was pretty good.
Well, the people in the chat roll are naming Too Close to Touch and Starting from Scratch.
Well, there you go.
Like over and over and over again. So I think you have a good
right.
touch on that.
That's good. That's good to know.
All right, Elle, your favorite chemistry characters of your own.
I hope that someday I'll be as successful as Georgia, you know, having 27 books out there that people love. That's amazing.
Thank you.
You know, I guess my first full-length novel, and it's also my longest novel, Casting Lacey. I think Quinn and Lacey had, because it was slow burn, you know, it took the whole book almost for them to get together. You know, I think that the chemistry between them, and it was, you know, up and down, angry, happy, all that kind of stuff. I think
I love those two.
Yeah, I love them too. I think I would have to go with them.
Casting Lacey. All right, Rachel Spangler. Favorite couple and why?
See, I thought this question was going to ask us who was our favorite couple for like chemistry gold standard, and then at the very last minute you said in your own book, and I was so disappointed because I was gonna say I was like Too Close to Touch, because Georgia, I was ready with my answer. It's Georgia Beer's Too Close to Touch. That is, I think. I've waxed poetic about this book at multiple GCLS conferences, but I think that's the gold standard in that they have virtually no other conflict around them. You know, nobody shows up with a gun. There's no, you know, that nothing dastardly happens to any of them, and yet you just keep flipping pages because you are so ready to see these two together. So now I've just answered the question that I wanted you to ask instead of the one you actually asked. But
expect nothing less.
It's just really hard for me to say about my own book because I don't read them after they're published.
Oh, come on. I want an answer and I want it now.
I'm gonna go just a slightly different direction. Ones where the chemistry came easiest to me to write. I hope that comes through. In development was extremely easy for me to write their interactions with each other. They talked to each other when I was mowing the lawn, when I was showering, when I was doing dishes. They were constantly trying to get at each other. And the one I'm writing, the one that's coming out, I don't know when, I'm editing right now, is going to be called Modern English. They were very similar. Like, it was one of the rare books that I would write something and then turn to my wife and be like, oh my God, she just told her blah, 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 blah. And my wife would be like, I have no context for that statement at all. But in my mind, it was really easy to see. Sexually, Spanish Surrender, those two just wanted to fuck each other constantly. Like, to the point that I was like, okay, can we just make reference to the fact that y'all just did it again and move on? Because physically, that was a really strong attraction.
Awesome. All right, so she cheated by naming two. I'm just kidding. I'm just picking on you because I like you.
Multiple too.
Jamie?
I already answered this one.
Oh, you did. I'm sorry. I've lost my track of J's. Jay.
I will follow Rachel's example and cheat a little because it is really hard to pick just one. I would say the Fair Oak series, book one, Perfect Rhythm. I think there's the strongest romantic chemistry between them, especially since they can't rely on the sexual chemistry. And they develop a really, really deep intimacy of the emotional kind. And the follow-up book, Not the Marrying Kind, features Holly's ex-girlfriend, and the only relationship she's ever been in previously is with an asexual character or an asexual person. So she has never had this experience of being deeply passionately desired. And when she gets together with Sasha, yeah, it's kind of it's a very strong sexual pull between them.
That's a great title. Not the marrying kind. Jay does great with the titles. I remember when I went to write Blend, she had already written something in the wine, and I was like, oh.
I didn't want to talk. Fresh tracks.
So another audience question is, how do you show attraction that isn't physical? So, you know, we've kind of danced around this a little bit about how you can have chemistry that isn't physical, but how do you show that on the page? What challenges are unique to that?
Banter.
Say again, Elle?
Witty banter.
Witty banter.
I was going to say that. I think that humor helps a lot. I will fall back to humor in a lot of different chemistry situations. If I feel like there's not a lot of chemistry on the page between these two, then I will throw in, as Elle says, some witty banter, some flirting back and forth. I find humor sexy.
Yeah.
So I think that I would fall back to humor.
Jamie, humor sexy or something else?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, teasing can be tricky, but so there's kind of a line there. But I love the long looks. I know it's cheesy, but
Do you also like long walks on the beach, Jamie?
I do.
Pina coladas.
That too. Yeah, no, so I think the witty banter, and as much as I love the casual caress, you know, when someone stands too close and you feel that energy,
Yeah.
if you're trying to separate the two, then it's all about staring into each other's eyes.
Jay, staring into each other's eyes or witty banter?
Both. Yeah, I mean, banter, yeah, I think I have it in all of my books. If the characters don't have a sense of humor, I don't want to write them. But I think for me, it's also about the more serious moments, showing how they make each other, themselves vulnerable with each other, and how they support each other, and that they switch being the strong one and being the one who needs the support throughout the novel. That's also part of chemistry to me.
Rachel?
Yeah, I would expand on witty banter to not just include humor. I think sometimes when they shoot back at each other really fast, it doesn't have to be funny, but it can still convey the way that they play off of each other really well. I think you can do that in arguments. I think you can do that in a lot of different ways. I think enemies to lovers gives you a chance to do that a lot. I think competition really, really can amp up those emotions. I remember once Sandy Lowe put me on a Bold Strokes put me on a sex panel, and I was being particularly, like, I don't know, obstinate that day, and I read a go-kart scene instead of a sex scene. But it was a situation where they were both like trying to one up each other. They were trying to top each other, you know, and that really and it ends up with one of them putting the other one in the wall, you know, just this fight for dominance, you know, that you can see in sex scenes, but these sexual impulses can play out across a wide spectrum of interactions. You know, this trying to assert oneself, this trying to set a pecking order, this trying to prove yourself as worthy of someone's attention or affection, or just generate a strong reaction from someone, can be done in a lot of ways that have parallels, but don't actually involve any sort of physicality.
You've done the competition thing a couple of times with your sports romances.
Yeah,
right?
Sports romances. I love that. And I was actually just yesterday, I wrote a scene. I'm not going to go into too much to spoil anything, but I wrote a scene where they were both on paddle boards, and one of them says something kind of snippy, and the other one just flips her paddleboard. Just does. you know, like, you just, great, you're smart, you're witty, flip, you know, and now you're in the drink. You know, so I think that there are ways to play off of each other, to see how these people interact, to see what their gut reactions are to each other, to see how they they play off of each other in ways that don't have to involve, checking out someone's ass.
So that's a great segue to another audience question from an author, K. Aiton. So I struggle writing chemistry, and the longer I write, the harder it is to write sex scenes. What are your thoughts on fade to black versus full-on sex scenes when it comes to supplementing the chemistry of your characters? And basically, it's like, do you have to have sex scenes? How many? How do you judge that? It's a tall, big question with a lot of possibilities, and I'm going to go to Elle first on this one.
Well, I've been told that I'm not allowed to write a book without a sex scene in it. So I think it's.
Who told you that? No, I'm just saying it's not like a prerequisite.
Someone told me that it's required. So. Not that I wrote a lot of fade to black, but that at this point, as far as romances go, that it's people expect it and want it to go that far. Want to read them getting jiggy, So, what was the question?
I mean, how do you decide? I mean, how do you decide how much to include in your books?
Oh yeah, that just depends on the book and the plot, but I would say at least 3.
All right.
Don't listen to me. I don't know anything.
I've got 3. Do I hear 4? All right, Jay, I'm going to go to you next on this because obvious reasons.
I don't think I have a book with 3 sex scenes. I have 2 books without sex scenes. For me, it all depends on the book and the characters. In Shaken to the Core, for example, the characters, it's set in 1906 during the time of the great earthquake and fires of San Francisco. So the characters spent the entire books trying to survive. They are covered in ashes, in sweat. They haven't bathed for probably weeks, and there's no privacy. They're in a big tent. So there's no way I'm including a sex scene. It wouldn't have fit the plot. I could have tagged it on in the end, but to me, it didn't add anything. So I left it out. I have been criticized for it. I have gotten 1-star reviews, but I stand by it. The same is true for Something in the Wine. There's no sex scene in it because one of the characters is extremely introverted, very much in her head, and has never been with a woman before. And I felt at the end of the book, I don't think she would be there yet. But I have written a sex scene for them in a separate short story. I didn't want to shy away from it. I just didn't want to include it in the book itself. Most of the time, I think the sex scene, if it's part of the plot and of the character development and it adds to the story, absolutely put it in. If the second sex scene don't changes anything between them, why? Unless you're writing erotic romance, I don't feel the need for it. But if it shows a progression of trust between them or overcoming fears, then absolutely a second or even third or fourth sex scene can absolutely make sense. So yeah, I'd have to say it depends.
It's a good answer. Mm-hmm. It depends, but I don't want that answer from you, Georgia. What's your unique answer?
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with not having a sex scene. I just, like Jay said, I mean, the whole thing about writing is if the scene doesn't move the story forward, then it has no place in the book. So you can't put a sex scene in there just to put a sex scene in there unless you're writing erotica. That's a different animal altogether. But I know as a reader, for me, when I'm reading romance, mostly I'm invested in the characters and I don't want to be shut out of the bedroom. But Jay gives some good examples. I mean, if we're at the end of the book and this is where we've come to and a sex scene is going to give me nothing but yay, a sex scene, and it doesn't do anything for the story, then I'm okay with it not being there. For my writing, I tend to be excited to get these people into bed. So I want to see it as much as the readers want to see it. So I tend to have a sex scene in every book. I don't always have multiple sex scenes. I think that the first one is the most important because this is when all of the emotions come out. Most of the time, not necessarily. I mean, there are different types of books and different instances where that's not the case. But for me, when I'm writing a romance, the very first love scene is generally the most important. I will throw a couple extra ones in there if they're fun and I feel like it's giving us a little more in-depth look of what the relationship is developing into. I think kissing is almost more important than the love scene because there is nothing hotter than a really, really good first kiss. So I think I focus more on that, and then that brings me to the love scene, and then I will do that. But I've read books with a fade to black. It's fine. I mean, whatever works for the story is what's most important. And I know that there are people who will flip past the sex scene if it makes them uncomfortable. I'm fine with that too.
Jamie, I think I know your general approach, but from having read your work.
I like sex. No, I think I wanted to say, and this is not a shameless plug, but a little bit. Next week, we're having this conversation. The whole panel is about this conversation. So if you guys come back next week, it's because I know it's something that readers and writers feel very strongly about. I'm with Georgia in that I love that first kiss more than I actually love the sex scene. And I feel let down sometimes if a writer glosses over the first kiss, because it's been building up so much in me. And then if it's just, and then it happened, I'm like, so for me, that is the most important thing. So if you feel like you're a writer that wants to fade to black, just don't cheat on that kiss. Like you got to make that kiss really impact me. And I like sex, and so I also want that. But if you're not into it, then when I'm reading your book, I'm kind of sad because I can tell you're not into it. So I want you as a writer to be really excited when you're writing that sex scene, and to be excited to see it happen, and to as you guys have said, to have it be meaningful and impactful for the characters. And really, it doesn't necessarily have to further the plot, but it has to be furthering the relationship. Otherwise, I mean, what sex doesn't further your relationship? Like it always does. And so if it's not, then you're just putting part A into part B, and that's not all that fun to read.
I have a question.
Good answer.
Is it possible to write a slow burn and not have it have a sex scene?
That is a good question, Al Spencer.
Huh?
That is a good question, Al Spencer.
So, Rachel, you want to tackle that?
I'm the person who always looks for the counter example, the way in which you could do that successfully. I believe that anything, I mean, we're artists. We create. That's our job. I think that anybody, if they dedicated themselves, could probably find a way to make that compelling. We have really good writers in our genre who do things that I didn't think was possible until they did them. However, of the ones I have read so far, I would be disappointed. I would be disappointed if they pulled me along, got my heart and my other body parts invested in this build up, and then didn't offer some really serious payoff at the end. And I think, you know, do you guys remember when you were in high school and the teacher would give an assignment and you would be like, how long does it have to be? And the teacher would say, as long as it needs to be. You know, that's my answer to all of these questions. Like, it needs to be what it needs to be for those characters. And if those characters, for some legitimate reason, don't need to have a sex scene, then I'm fine with that. What really, really bothers me, though, is when the writer fades to black because they're uncomfortable, or because they're out of pages, or because they don't like to write sex scenes. I've heard authors, I did the slush pile for Bywater for a while, and I had authors say, I don't write sex scenes because I just don't like them. Well, that's a terrible, terrible reason. You need to not write a sex scene because it's what the characters or the story called for. And if you're letting your personal feelings, you know, I'm uncomfortable with sex scenes, dictate how you make that decision, that is always going to be disappointing for the reader.
Agreed.
Well, that is an awesome, very thoughtful answer. And all of these answers have been awesome and very thoughtful. And I cannot believe it has been an hour, but Anne, we're going to run a couple of minutes over because I want to give everyone an opportunity to tell us what you're working on now, what's coming up next. And thanks to everyone in the audience who's chimed in with lots of great comments and questions. I wish we could have gotten to them all. Thanks very much. So I'm going to start with Jay. Tell us what's next up on your list of.
I just sent my novel number 21 off to my publisher. It's called Wrong Number, Right Woman. And it's about, it's about a shy butch character who, I tried to write a novel with real characters, with everyday people. So she has love handles. She has, she's very shy and she doesn't like bars and she doesn't know how to talk to women. And basically she meets another woman who sends her an accidental text message. And that's what kicks off the relationship. And it's
Nice.
being published by Ilva at the end of August.
Awesome. Rachel, what's up next for you?
Modern English will come out some point this fall, depending on how quickly I get the edits done. It follows Lady Victoria from Full English. This was the first time that I started getting a lot of reviews asking for a book to follow a side character. And so I jokingly said, well, if a quarter of the reviews ask for her story, then I'll give it to them. And then we did an inventory and it came out at about 90% of the reviews.
Careful what you wish for.
That's that story. So I went ahead and wrote that. And I've also been toying around with an erotica collection that is really wildly different for me. But it's 5 interlocking erotic stories. I was calling them short stories, but then my editor pointed out that they're averaging about 60,000 or 16,000 words. So when you put them together, it's a full-length novel, and maybe they're not quite short stories.
5 interlocking erotic stories is an orgy.
Same character.
Kidding.
Yeah. Although now that you mention it, I do have one story left to write, Carson.
Georgia, what's up next for you?
Next for me, I have Hopeless Romantic coming out in August, so just a few more weeks. It is about a divorce attorney who is a hopeless romantic and a wedding planner who does not believe in love.
Love, love, love. Elle, what's up next for you?
I'm terrible at describing my own books, but up next is The Holiday Treatment, and it comes out in November, a holiday-themed book about a screenwriter and a television executive trying to get the first full-length lesbian movie on a Hallmark-type channel. And it's a rom-com, so it's a fun read. And then what I'm working on right now is a book about an author and a book critic, a blogger, and enemies to lovers, and that'll come out in the spring.
Awesome. Looking forward to both of those. Jamie, what's up next for you?
So right now I'm writing a sex party book. I know. It's actually a lot of fun, but it's a character from a previous novel. Kind of like Rachel, I decided to take on a character that I was really drawn to as kind of a little bit of an evil character. So she is not the romantic interest in this, but she's the foil for the other two. And so it's her sex party. And these other 2 people, one of them doesn't want to be there. Well, actually, in some ways, neither of them really want to be there. One is doing it to get over 5 years of not having sex. And one is done with sex parties, but is going one last time. And so it's these 2 that meet up. They're both not really wanting to have sex. So
Interesting.
When's this coming out?
This one, I'm not sure. Probably in around Valentine's Day, that sort of time for 2021.
Perfection. Who doesn't want a sex party for Valentine's Day, right?
Carson, I love your lab coat.
Oh, thank you. I'll let you borrow
Your
it sometime.
beakers.
You
And my beakers.
Awesome.
I just want to say thank you to Carson. You've been a fantastic moderator. We appreciate
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Easy with you guys. Y'all are great chemistry professionals. All right, that's it for us kids. I think a voice is gonna come on and bid us farewell. Anne?
Yes, thank you, Carson, and panelists and everybody who's joined today. It was a great panel. We've learned lots about chemistry, and we'll be back on Friday, the 10th at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time for Creating Our Culture. We hope that you'll join us then, and until then, everybody take care, stay safe, stay well, and we'll see you soon. So goodbye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.